Hi everyone, welcome back to Kidding Around. My name is Melanie Smith, and I think it is super awesome that you are here with me today on another Standout Story Day. Today we will be reading the amazing book, Belle, the Last Mule at Gee's Bend, and we will also be making these really cool paper quilt squares. Before we do that though, if you like what you're seeing here and want to follow along with all of Kidding Around's videos, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also if you really like what you're doing here, please share us with your friends. Thank you so much. All right, well, as I mentioned, this is an incredible book, and it brings up a lot of great topics and great discussions to have. But first, before we can have those, we need to all be on the same page. Haha, same page like this in the book. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. We'll read the book, and then we will have some discussions afterwards, okay? All right. Belle, the Last Mule at Gee's Bend, a civil rights story by Calvin Alexander Ramsey and Betty Stroud, illustrated by John Holyfield. Alex sat on a bench outside the store. He wanted to go and play, but his mother had told him to wait for her. There was nothing to do on the porch but watch an old mule eating in the garden across the street. There was no breeze. Not a leaf moved in the chinaberry trees. It was so still that Alex could hear the mule munching on a row of bright collard greens. He watched as the mule's big fuzzy ears twitched away a pesky fly. An old woman walked slowly up the wooden steps to the store and sat down on the bench next to Alex. She fanned herself with a folded newspaper. He looked at her out of the corner of his eye. She was watching the mule too. The old woman chuckled and then said in a soft voice, "Myself, I like collards cooked with some ham and spiced with vinegar." Alex smiled. "I was just thinking how that old mule sure can eat collards," said the woman. "Is it allowed to? I mean, eat someone's garden like that?" asked Alex. "Old Belle, she can have all the collards she wants. She's earned it." The woman looked straight at Alex and said, "I let her loose, you see, and that's my garden. I thought I'd sit in the shade and rest a bit before I shoot her out." "But ma'am, why do you want to let the mule eat your collard plants?" "My name's Miss Petaway, son," she said. "What's yours?" "I'm Alex," he answered. "Well, Alex, there's enough greens in my garden for both of us, and Belle's a very special mule. She's a hero here in Gee's Bend. I like to show her some respect." "What's so special about that old mule?" Alex asked as he stood up. The woman took a deep breath. "Now that's a long story, but if you have some time to sit," she patted the bench. Alex hesitated. He wondered if she was just a crazy old lady. But he was curious, and after all, there was nothing else to do. "Gee's Bend has always been poor," she began. "There's not much here but farmland. We always needed mules to help us work the land. Not many of us could afford a car." "How could you get anywhere?" Alex asked. "Well, that's just it. Benders, that's what we call ourselves here, used mules to haul most everything. Belle's been with us for many years now. She was here the day Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to speak to us way back in 1965. "I know about Dr. Martin Luther King from school. Did you get to meet him?" Alex asked. "Oh, yes, sir, I did. That night there was a terrible storm. Lots of people thought he wouldn't make it to see us poor folks. I waited not far from here with Belle. It was past midnight when Dr. King finally arrived. But he still spoke to us that night and nearly took the roof off Pleasant Grove Baptist Church with his wonderful words." "What did he say?" Alex asked. "Well, in those days we had a ferry to cross the river into Camden, where there were jobs and stores. Dr. King told us to take the ferry to Camden and register to vote. 'Cross the river for freedom,' he sang out that night. Even though we were poor dirt farmers, descendants of slaves, with only mules to carry our loads, he said, I come over here to G's Bend to tell you, you are somebody. He told us we had a right to vote. You understand, Alex, back then no black person from Wilcox County had ever dared to vote. Were you scared? Alex asked. Ms. Pettaway sighed and thought for a moment. I don't think we were scared, not after Dr. King spoke to us. We felt strong like our mules. And we did just what he told us to do. So many went to register that we almost swamped that little ferry. Some Benders went on to march with Dr. King in Selma, in Montgomery, in Birmingham, and in the March on Washington. Benders are loyal like mules, too, Ms. Pettaway added, chuckling. We read about all those marches in school, Alex added. But we must have scared the white folks in Camden, because the next thing we knew, they shut down the ferry. The white sheriff was a big bully who wanted to keep us in our place. He told reporters, we didn't close the ferry because they were black. We closed it because they forgot they were black. So when it came time to vote, we had no way to cross the river, but we wouldn't be stopped. Benders are like old Bell here, not fancy, but strong and steady and stubborn. We filled our few cars with as many people as could fit, and then our mules carried wagon loads of people round the river all day to vote. It took half a day to get there, but it was worth it. We sang and clapped all the way into town. Folks in Camden sure were surprised. You showed them, Alex laughed. Is that why Bell's your hero? There is more to it. A lot of people here lost their jobs in Camden because they voted. Things got bad. With no jobs, we had no money for food, so some of us joined the Freedom Quilting Bee in Alberta, and eventually we started our own, called ourselves the G's Bend Quilters. You see, the women of G's Bend had always made quilts. Some of the most beautiful quilts in the world were made right here. Soon they were being sold all over the United States. We became famous. That's why I'm here. My mother came here to shop for a quilt today, Alex explained. That's a happy ending, isn't it? But it's not the end of the story for Belle. Miss Pettaway's voice turned softer. Alex, do you remember learning in school what happened on the 4th of April in 1968? Alex looked into Miss Pettaway's eyes and saw how sad they looked. That's when Dr. King got shot, isn't it? He asked, and for the first time he felt the sadness himself. Yes, everyone in G's Bend was grieved. Miss Pettaway took a deep breath and looked out at the trees. A slight breeze seemed to shuffle the leaves. We got a phone call asking if our mules could pull Dr. King's coffin through the streets of Atlanta during the funeral parade. They wanted to use our mules, not fancy draft horses. Mules take their time, work hard, and they never back down. Mules aren't pretty, but they are somebody. It meant so much to us that Benders could honor the memory of Dr. King. Belle and another mule named Ada were loaded onto a truck to begin their journey to Atlanta. But as usual, it wasn't going to be easy. State policemen stopped the truck and asked the drivers to show them a permit for hauling livestock across state lines. They threatened to arrest the drivers when they didn't have the papers. Told them they'd have to turn back. We got word to Dr. King's headquarters in Atlanta about what had happened, and they called the state police and the governors of Alabama and Georgia. They told them it would look shameful on TV and in the news all over the nation if they refused to let our mules pull the funeral train. After that, the troopers escorted our Belle and Ada right into Atlanta. Belle pulled Dr. Martin Luther King's coffin? Alex asked. Yes, sir. Belle and Ada bravely pulled that wagon 3.5 miles through streets that were full of grieving, weeping people. As they passed, people reached out and touched the mules and the casket. Imagine the thousands of arms and hands reaching out to them, but they kept moving, slow and steady. They didn't back down or get scared, just kept going. The funeral was televised around the world. 60,000 people gathered around the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and tens of thousands more lined the streets. We were very proud. And that's why we love our last mule here at G's Bend, and why I let Belle eat all the collard greens she wants. Alex and Miss Petaway turned to look at Old Belle, who stopped her munching and looked up at them. They both laughed. "Yep, she's had her fill," Miss Petaway said, slowly rising off the bench. "Want to go meet her?" "Yes, ma'am." Alex skipped down the steps and over to Belle, who let him scratch her fuzzy ears. Alex looked into the mule's eyes and thought about all the history she had seen. "Thank you for telling me about Belle," Alex said. "Now you know what Dr. King meant when he told us that even though we led simple, hard lives, we were still somebody," she said. "And even an old mule can be a hero," Alex added. Miss Petaway smiled and walked away, leading Belle behind her. Isn't that a great story? It's a true story, too. 2 mules from Gee's Bend, named Ada and Belle, were selected to pull the casket of Dr. Martin Luther King through the streets of Atlanta for his funeral procession. Here's a picture. You can see the 2 mules, Ada and Belle, and you'll also see the casket of Dr. Martin Luther King, and then you will see many people around him mourning his passing. It's estimated that 50,000 people traveled to the funeral of Dr. Martin Luther King to pay their respects to a great man. And you can understand why so many people were impacted by Dr. Martin Luther King after reading a book like this. Dr. Martin Luther King traveled around the country telling people that they were important. They were somebody. I'm sure that if he were still alive today, he would still have the same message. And it's an important one for you to hear too. You are important. Anyway, I hope that you really enjoyed learning a little bit about Dr. Martin Luther King and also learning about how important he was and how important his message was. I hope you also learned a little bit about Gee's Bend. And I realize now I don't know that we've talked about exactly where Gee's Bend is. It's a small and remote Black community in Alabama. The women of Gee's Bend, Alabama, have created hundreds of quilt masterpieces dating back to the early 20th century. These quilters started by taking apart old clothes by hand so as to use the entire piece of fabric. So they didn't cut old pieces of fabric apart. They actually unstitched all of the pieces so that they could use every tiny little scrap of fabric in their quilts. These quilts are just amazing, don't you think? So I thought today, in honor of the quilters of Gee's Bend, that we would make our own quilt squares. Ours will be of paper, where theirs were made of fabric, but we do have a similarity in that we are going to make sure that we have no waste left over. Just like the quilters of Gee's Bend decided to have no scraps and use every single piece of fabric, we are going to make sure that we have no scraps of paper left over, and we are going to use every single scrap of paper that we end up making. So to do this, you will need a few supplies. You will need a pair of scissors, a glue stick, a ruler and a pencil, and then you will need several pieces of construction paper. This is a great project to use up some leftover scraps from previous projects that you've made. All right, so what we are going to do first is we are going to make our backing for our quilt. And to do this, I am going to make a 5x5 square. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a full piece of construction paper, or at least a piece of construction paper that's bigger than 5 inches by 5 inches, and I'm going to cut it to 5 inches by 5 inches. This will be the square. So to do that, I lay out my ruler, and I make sure that the one side, the edge, is clear up to the edge of the paper, and then I am going to make a mark at 5 inches, and then I'm going to move up the paper just a little bit and do the same thing. This will give me 2 dots that then I can connect. So I'm connecting those 2 dots. So this part is 5 inches, and then I'm going to do the same thing as I turn my paper to get my square. So I line up my ruler, and then I make a line at 5 inches, and then I'm going to make another line right there at 5 inches, and then I will connect those dots. And now I have a 5 inch by 5 inch square, and I am going to go ahead and cut that out, and this will be the piece that I glue all of my other scraps onto. All right, so you can see here 5 by 5 is not very big, and I have 4 scraps here. These are playing card size. If you want to cut your scraps into about similar sizes as mine, I would recommend cutting them into about a playing card size. And now I am going to do my best, and I'm going to succeed in making sure that everything that I cut here goes onto my quilt square. So I don't have too much rhyme or reason into what I'm doing. I'm going to cut some strips of each of these colors, and then I'll cut some small squares too. And I'm going to do that with every single piece of paper that I have. My challenge to you is to use 4 pieces of paper that are about playing card size and get every single piece of those papers onto your 5 by 5 quilt back. It seems like it might be kind of easy, but I will tell you it is more difficult than you might imagine. But I think it is a great challenge. So you can see here that I'm cutting some long strips and I'm cutting some short strips and I'm cutting some small squares. Those are all great things to use in quilts. Long strips, small squares. I am not going to cut any circles or triangles, but you absolutely could if you wanted to. Really, truly, you can do whatever you would like as long as there are no scraps left over when you are done. All right, so now I have cut almost everything I'm going to use. Now the fun begins. So I think maybe I will lay out a few pieces and then I will glue them. You could lay out all of the pieces that you wanted to, or all of your pieces first and then glue them. I think I'll probably do a combination. So I think I'll lay out a few and then I will glue those as I go. So, you know, it's easier to glue on the smaller piece of your project. Whoa, I keep bending that one though. All right, I'll glue it down so it can't bend. All right, so I'm gluing on the small pieces and then putting them on the big pieces. And I'm making sure to get enough glue to stick it down, but you know, I'm not going to put a lot of glue on because really just a little bit does go a long way. Or it's that happy medium, I suppose, that you try to find. All right, so I have some scraps there, or some strips there. Now I think maybe I'll alternate, I'll make a pattern here. So I'm going blue, red, blue, red. You know, that's known as an A-B-A-B pattern because we're going to say right here that blue is A and this red is B, and then I'm repeating. So then I'm going back to my A, my blue, and then I'll go back to my red, which is B. So you can see how that's A-B-A-B. All right, let's see. Now I'm going to put some strips here across the top, and you can absolutely overlap. They may not have done that on quilts. They would overlap a little bit. My guess is they probably wouldn't overlap too much, but in our project here, it's absolutely allowed. Remember, we want no scraps left over at the end of this. We're putting quite a bit of paper on the backing of our quilt square. Let's see, I think I'm going to put this orange one up here in the top. And then, oh, I should overlap here too. Oh, how about if I overlap this orange between the red and the blue? And then I'll do that with this one as well. I'll overlap the red and the blue with the orange. And then let's see, why don't we put a yellow square down here? Again, anything that you like to see, any type of design that you want to do, you are totally free to do. And what's going to be really cool about this is that every person's is going to look so very different, and they're all going to be beautiful. All right, there, I've got another pattern going up here. Oh, I've got a red or a yellow square I can put right on top of that red square. All right, so where am I going to put this strip? See, it kind of becomes a game, right? Like, where can I put these strips to make sure, oh, I haven't used blue. Where can I put these strips to make sure that I am not going to have any waste left over? But also look at this beautiful art that it's creating. All right, I'll have to tell you, I'm getting a little nervous. Do you think that I can do this? Do you think I can get all of this paper onto my green square? All right, well, I'm still going. I think I can do it. I think so. All right, so now we'll have cascading squares coming down from the top, just like we do going up from the bottom. Let's see, I've got a couple oranges. Maybe I'll put that there. And, oh, where am I going to put this one? You know what? I think I'm going to put it right next to it. I think that looks very nice. Okay, I'm close, right? I am so close. I'm trying to make sure that if I do overlap, that I don't completely cover up another piece. But I don't know. I may end up covering a couple. But that's okay. We know that the other things are down there underneath, right? Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see. Maybe I'll put that there. I think now I am going to cut these up a little bit. Of course, I am still going to use them because I'm not going to have any scraps left over. But I think they might be a little better used if they were just a little bit smaller. I'll cut that one in half. I'll cut this one in half too. All right, now I'll put, oh, this will be great. Look at that. That connects those two oranges. I love that. And then, let's see. Oh, I can start another pattern here. I love these square-cornered patterns that kind of overlap. All right, I'm getting closer. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? Let's see, I'll take this blue and oh, this will be fun. Here, I'll put some blue in the yellows. That's kind of a nice little coordinating color pop. All right, there we go. Oh, I think I can do this. I think I can. How are you doing on yours? Are you struggling? This is such a great challenge. All right, let's see. We'll put some red squares up here in the top. Have another red square. There we go. We still let that orange shine through a little bit. And we still have a little green showing through from the background, which is great. Well, here, I'll put this blue on the yellow because I like the way that those two go together. And, oh, you know what? I see it. I see it. I am almost there. I have almost succeeded. I have one last piece to put on, and I know exactly where I'm putting it. Right there. So look at that. I think that is a great quilt square. I would love to see your quilt squares. Please ask a grown-up to take a picture of yours and put those on our Facebook page. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for reading about Belle. Thank you for learning about Dr. Martin Luther King and the Gee's Bend quilters. I hope that you've had as much fun as I have. I look forward to you joining me next Monday. We'll be doing another Masterpiece Monday lesson, and it is going to be a great one. But until then, thanks again so much for joining me. Thanks for kidding around with me. I will see you next time.